So, as obviously, well, obviously, here we go. I'm in like announcer mode. Obviously, you guys might have noticed that the market has shifted. Yeah. Yes. Okay. So, as we've shifted, and everybody definitely knows that, how we're expressing our value proposition, how we're expressing how the transaction is going to go down, how we're showing people that, we are the agent that you should be choosing is also going to change a little bit as well. I personally feel like, especially as buyer's agents, that we can definitely give a better service than we could, at least a perception of a better service. I do think it was a lot harder for us, the last 2 years to take on buyers and get them into a house than it is now. But I think the perceived perception is going to be definitely that we can provide a lot more value to our clients. And so that's a good thing. And so one of the things that Joe and I like to do, and I've talked to a lot of different agents about this, and I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were like, well, if it's somebody I already know, maybe I'm not going to do a consultation. And I can totally respect that. And, we just try to stay really consistent with how we operate. And so we figure if we're going to do, a listing or a buyer presentation for one client, we should probably do the same for another. And what we found is that by always kind of doing the buyer consultation, it's somewhere through the process. Now, don't get me wrong, the timing will change depending on the person, right? If this is like a lead or a sign pop, or, somebody that you barely know, we're definitely going to try to get the buyer consultation in right away, versus if it's somebody that we know well. We might kind of wait, maybe show a few houses first, try to do it, sometimes even in the house. It's not like super cut and dry, but we try to always get in some type of a consultation similar to this, because we find that, it's helpful for both parties. But so why the buyer consultation? And you guys can't see my screen, right? Yeah. Why the buyer consultation for the client? So the first one is we want to take a deep dive into their wants and needs, right? Or, do a wants and needs analysis, and what is important for them, right? How can I possibly do my job if I don't know what it is that they're looking for? What are the absolute have to haves versus the, would love to haves, and, what it is that they're trying to change, what's their motivation? So, we definitely want to explore all of that. We want to walk them through the home buying process from start to finish, because even if you've bought, 5 houses, it changes, right? Like, this is why we're doing this right now, because even for us, it changes. The last 2 years, the way that we handle the transaction is going to be very different to how we handle a transaction here for the next, couple of years. So I like to walk them through the home buying process, and maybe a lot of it is redundancy, or they know, oh yeah, of course I know that. But, it's like almost nobody really knows what escrow is, or, the timing of appraisal, or the difference between appraisal and home inspection. You forget between 5 years of purchases or whatever. And then we want to get them up to speed on exactly what is happening in the market today, right? Because again, and that sort of plays into what I was just talking about, but, it was of crucial importance over the last couple of years that the second we saw a house that we liked, we schedule an appointment that minute, right? And so that's a lot different than today, where, maybe we could wait till the weekend or even next month. Kidding. But so, we have a little script that, we can kind of use to get this appointment scheduled. And is this obviously this is a recommendation, but you can go something like, all right, Susie, so the next step for us is we're going to go ahead and meet for 20 or 30 minutes or so. We really want to take a deep dive into your wants and needs, so I can really understand what is important to you in this move. We're going to walk through the home buying process from start to finish. And then we can get you up to speed on what is happening in our real estate market currently. Would Thursday at 4 work, or Friday better? And maybe I might even throw in there, we could do this on Zoom, or whatever's most convenient for you, right? And when I go about it in that way, who wouldn't want to spend 20 or 30 minutes kind of learning about those things on a quick little Zoom meeting and, just kind of getting up to speed on the process, right? So most people are going to say yes to that. Obviously, and remember, I'm not talking about, no, I don't, right? I don't even talk about financing in this. Okay. So Joe and I have a real strong belief that we don't want to talk about money. Money is a very sensitive subject. And that's sort of like one of the last things that I want to address, which is highly inconvenient because we need to get their pre-approval, which should be the very first thing that we do, but we want to be real careful about bringing that in. And during the consultation, that is definitely something we'll talk about, but I'm not going to mention it in this first little spiel and, and we can look at how we're going to spend your money today. Like, oh, no, thank you. I don't want to do that. So I'm going to try to keep it pretty all about them. Right. And then real quick, why the buyer consultation for us? It builds trust. Okay. I can give them social proof. I'm going to show them my market knowledge. I can earn their loyalty. I'm going to show them that I'm the expert. I can get a commitment, right? The law of reciprocity. I always pronounce that wrong. And I can show my value, right? Because I'm not just the guy with the magic key that's going to go open doors for you, right? I'm going to do a whole lot more than that. And that's what we're going to show you in the consultation. So that's kind of the whys of why we like to do it. Now let me pop up. So I'm going to show you kind of two different buyer presentations. And I don't know if everybody knows this or not, but John L. Scott Corporate makes a buyer's guide. They call it the Buying Advantage. This started from what they used to call the real estate journey. And, there used to be the white box that went along with it. And they've since eliminated the white box because honestly, agents just don't want to spend money on buyers. For whatever reason, we'll spend money on the black box for sellers, but we won't spend money on buyers. So they got rid of the white box, but they do still have the buying guide. They call it the Buying Advantage. And let's take a look at that. And then what we've done, which I'll show you that here in a minute as well. We'll actually work off of that one. But we've just basically taken John L. Scott's Home Buying Advantage and customized it to the team, right? And so this guide is, and this is perfectly good. So if you're like, well, I don't really care about customizing it, this is something I could work off of, then this is, corporate put it together. It's super smart. It's beautiful. It's got great graphics. It's absolutely perfectly acceptable to work off of this. We just want to customize ours a little bit. And so we'll kind of get to that. But everybody has access to this version. It comes in in the PowerPoint that we're looking at today. So this is a PowerPoint, which is a Microsoft product, which you can work off of your desktop. It's very easy to manipulate and customize PowerPoint. I say very easy. I know a lot of people are like, oh, Jason, it's not really that easy. But it's just kind of like, okay, you go up here at the top, you insert, let's see, here's some text. Okay. Now I am customized, right? So I can also insert pictures. I can do shapes. I can do icons. Okay. Fairly easy to use PowerPoint. If you're a full Mac or Apple person, they do have a Keynote version of this as well. Keynote is just the just the Apple version of PowerPoint. But again, I work off PowerPoint because I think most everybody has that on their computer. So we could just customize this John L. Scott version real quickly. Like maybe I could just remove this page and then put in, all of my profile information, agent information, and that might be good for me. And I go through here and it starts off with the 6 strategies for today's housing market and so on and so forth. And I borrow most of these pages in ours, but I just wanted to go over this one first so everybody knows they have access to this. It comes in a PowerPoint, a Keynote, it comes in PDFs if you want to email it off, and it comes in a printed book that you can buy from Bear Printing for I think it's $6, $7, something like that. So however you want to do it, it all plays out the same. Okay, so that's the John L. Scott version. And then so this is our customized version. So and you see, I'm not as keen on advertising, John L. Scott as as they would like me to be. So we're gonna, keep our branding all very consistent. If you do have branding, team branding or whatever, I think it's a good idea to kind of always have the same look. So when people see it, they recognize it, they know it's you. It's like, oh yeah, it's those guys. We actually went off of a green color, even while we weren't with John L. Scott for just that 5 minutes. So this is a slightly different green than the John L. Scott, although it's hard to notice the difference and it works out perfectly. But anyway, so right off the bat, this is the same imagery off of our website, themadronagroup.com. And we call it the steps to buying success and working with Team TMG. Okay, so if we're going through, and then Joe, you're off mute now, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, one of the things is when we've entered somebody's house, we make a big production. Or this is our buying consultation, very similar to our listing consultation. But there's one thing that I learned early in sales is one of the best pieces of advice I've ever gotten, and it was the first thing we do is we sell ourselves, then we sell the company we represent, and then the product. And if you think about that in your own life, probably in any sphere that you're in, there's probably at least 3 other agents. And so it's important that we stand up to set ourselves apart. And that's really why we started doing this. So we sit down with our potential buyers and we tell them who we are. We're the Madrona Group. We started as 2 guys. Jason and myself started the Madrona Group several years ago. Since then, we've grown the team to Team TMG to what it is today. We've had the opportunity to purchase John L. Scott and Ballard, and also the Westwood and Westwood Village in West Seattle. So we're well entrenched into this industry, and so we have our finger on the pulse. Something like that. I just kind of tell them who we are. Mine's a little different.
Yeah. And this, it's like, it's not really that important, like what it is, and like, or that we break our back in trying to figure out like the most beautiful, perfect thing. It's just, what makes you unique, what makes you who you are. And yeah, you're just you have to sell yourself a little bit, right?
Yeah. We like to point out that we're just regular people. Oftentimes people have found us on the internet. This kind of helps break the ice. So I say, this is just us showing, this just shows you who we are. We're real people. We're just not some person behind the computer or behind the phone. We're in our community. There's me doing service work with the Union Gospel Mission, Jason with his family. There's us working in the, and I just point at a couple of slides. There's a happy client and I move on. I just kind of try to break the ice, make them comfortable. We're sitting down, we're just getting to know each other.
Yeah. And that there's psychology of this as well, in that oh hey, I have a family like you. Oh hey, I'm a Seahawk fan like you. Oh hey, I like to go hiking like you, right? So
this slide's important, and it's not, you can look at it 2 ways. We use this really to set the bar. One is I want to tell you what you can expect from me. But 2, I also want to set the bar that, you can communicate with me. And thirdly, I'm setting the bar to let you know that I'm going to probably ask you for a review too. So I say, hey, you told me you found me online. I don't know what site you saw, but we're all over the place with a lot of 5-star reviews. I don't tell you this to brag. I tell you this so that anytime during this process, if you don't feel like you're getting a white glove 5-star experience, please let me know so we can correct that, whether it's a vendor of mine you're using or whether it's, whatever the case is. But I always tie it to like open communication. And then at the end of the process, hopefully you're one of these people that want to give me a 5-star review too. And we smile and move on. I'm just trying to make them comfortable.
Absolutely. And also setting the tone, right? And I've talked to a lot of agents about this as well, right? Getting those 5-star reviews. And how do you do it? It's very hard. Okay. It's really hard. People don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I'll have a beautiful experience somewhere. A Yelp will say, hey, did you have a great experience here? I'm like, I sure did. They're like, do you want to tell everybody about it? Yeah, I kind of do. I clicked the little button and I'm like, oh God, what do I write? Like you put all this pressure. I got to make it sound like so eloquent or something. Like this restaurant, it dazzled me and my taste buds were jumping off the palate. I don't know, you know what I mean? So it's like, it's a lot of pressure to do that. And so, So we, we tell them that, hey, at the end, we're going to ask you to do this so that it's not a big surprise. And then one other thing I want to point out is just that, oh, shoot. And telling that story, I forgot the other thing. But anyway, okay, great job. All right.
So this is, I talked about selling ourselves. I just did. Then you sell your brand. And we just put this slide in. It was a different slide, but I always like to talk about the fact that we are a third generation company, that the CEO of the company is still at the helm, very active, not only in our offices, but in the industry itself. And that he's nationally been recognized as the 29th most influential man in the industry. I like to talk about how, because of the tools that we have, our agents are number 2 in production nationwide, meaning our agents sell more houses than any other brand, except of one nationwide. And I like to talk about the fact that we're charitable. I guess that's not on here now. It used to talk a lot about the children's hospital donations on this slide. And I'll talk about how, we've done over 20 billion in sales. We started out here in Seattle and now we've grown into a few other states. Kind of like that. I just get brand recognition.
Right. Any questions so far? I don't want to go on too much. I mean, obviously this is not really too question type material, but
one thing I add here also is that, well, obviously you said it, Joe, living life is a contribution, but I think it's important to focus on the fact that we're mostly in Washington, Oregon, and Idaho as well. That kind of speaks to our hyperlocal expertise. So I thought that's why this slide was good, because again, selling the brand and how is that going to help you,
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So one of the exercises I had to do early on when I started working with Jason is we had to define what our unique value proposition is. Mine's going to be different than yours. Jason's is different than mine. We work together, so we kind of talk about a 1-2 punch. But this page, I start to tell about how I'm going to, set you apart. And what we've got it down is we're going to save you time and money. With Jason's knowledge, local expertise, and his marketing knowledge, and with my he's going to save you time because we're going to get you to the right house faster. And with my negotiation skills, I'm going to get you the best deal on the home with the most favorable terms, and I talk about my background and putting myself through college. I got laid off working at Costco. And so I went and started selling cars. And it's the only job I ever no-showed for the first week because I would get so full of fear because I never considered myself a salesperson. But I really learned the art of sales there. And so I'll start talking about that on this slide.
Yeah, this is a very key slide. And if you guys have ever been in a consultation and had somebody ask you, what makes you different than the other 2 agents that I'm going to interview? And you can't answer that question without bumbling along. You will spend time to create your unique value proposition. And that's what happened to us. I remember when it happened and we both just sat there going, we're super awesome. And you know what I mean?
You got double the coverage for double the fun.
And so it was like, nope, that has to be something that you talk about. You have to be able to I think that you should be able to sit down. You should have your like 30-second version of it. And you should have like your 5-minute version of it. What makes you unique and what are you bringing to the table? And, for buying and for selling, obviously a little bit different. And just because there's 2 of us, we kind of split it up like this just to make a point. But like if I was presenting alone, I would still talk about, my negotiation skills as well. Like, we'd kind of go 1-2 and vice versa if Joe's doing it alone. And I thought about this if, like what if you haven't lived here your whole life, right? So both Joe and I were born and raised here in the Northwest. And so, we can speak to being a local expert very easily. But what if I didn't? What are some other things that I could do? And so I was thinking about, well, what if I told them, hey, I make it a point to go tour 3 homes every week and do an open house, at least one open house every weekend, so that I know exactly what's going on in each neighborhood, something like that, right? Doesn't that also sound just as impressive? Like, oh, you clearly know what's going on. You take this seriously and I can trust you. So you don't have to be like born and raised here to be a local expert. You could be doing other things. You might say, oh, I go and study a neighborhood a week just to make sure that I'm current on exactly what's going on with the eateries and the demographics and the sales, the market of that area, whatever, right? So a lot of different ways that you could show your expertise locally.
And that's something too, like if you wonder what your expertise are, call us. Let's talk. Let's figure out what it is that your passion is in this industry. What do you think that makes you unique? What drove you into this industry? We can explore that together. We always like to mention that, with the Washington State real estate license, we could sell anywhere. As you can see, I've sold up in Plain, but we really focus our skill set right here in the I-5 corridor where you're looking, or whatever the case. You can draw your own story from these, but we just like to show that we're active locally. And this shows, and people ask about that. I say, yeah, some of my clients have come and bought vacation homes from me also. So even though they're up here in Plain, we've also sold them a house here in Mukilteo, so it's just a great conversation piece.
Yeah. And the other part of that is that we can never assume that people understand how this business works, right? And we find out, like almost every single time, people really don't understand how this business works. So, you have people say, well, you're at the Ballard office, so I'm going to go look for an agent up in Lake Stevens, or oh, you're in the Westwood office, so I'm going to go find a Tacoma agent or a Renton agent. It's like, oh, no, it's okay. You see, I've gone all the way from Tacoma up to Oak Harbor. I got you covered. And if you're not that way, that's fine. You say, I got a referral system for you, but I'll take care of you no matter what. So
this slide just kind of tells you what we need to talk about today. So, I've met with you now. We're really comfortable. Now you understand who I am, what my brand is. So there's some things we need to make sure we understand. And so, Jason, today, what I want to cover is I want to make sure that I know what's important to you. I want to learn the difference between a need and a want and see really what that is, so I can actually start getting prepared for you. We're also going to create a home search with you based off of your wants and needs. We'll talk a little bit about the key market strategies. Like right now, though we have more inventory than we've had in a long time, we still don't have an abundance of inventory. So we'll probably start that search with a wide stroke and tighten it up as we get in houses together. When it comes to finding the right home, we're going to look at the different options to purchase it. Maybe I already know that they need financing. Maybe I have no clue. So this is where I can start that probe. So I want to make sure that we have all your financing in place so that when we get to that right home, we can go to work for you. And then, as your trusted advisor, I'm going to walk you through the whole purchase process. There's a lot of steps to it, a lot of moving parts, and a lot of parties involved. What I want you to know is I'm going to be your main point of contact, and I'll help get all your questions answered and make sure that you're in the right hands. So here we start talking about the difference between wants and needs. Like you tell me I need a 4-bedroom house, and if I start talking to you, well, really, you need bedrooms for 3 people and you need a home office. And so maybe 3 bedrooms and a den. Like I'd really love a 4th bedroom, but a 3 bedrooms is enough. And so we'll just start talking about that. And if I'm talking to multiple party decision makers, I'll say, hey, some of these are rhetorical questions for you to go home and discuss. And once we start to get into these homes, we're going to see really what you're saying when you say a large bedroom. You two might be saying the same words and having a different experience. And so we'll get into that with you and see what you really need.
Absolutely. And you know what, I mean, I don't think that Joe and I have ever sat down and done a buyer consultation with folks and we actually buy the house that they explained to us during this process, right? I mean, raise your hand if that's been your case. And they'll come to you and they'll be like, hey, I want to go look at this one. And you're like, dude, that doesn't have anything that you said that we need to have.
And
like,
then they have to have it.
Right. So
like
I
30
think,
miles away from where you were looking.
Yeah.
Crazy.
And so it's important that, we really, I think, express kind of that, the difference between what we want and then need. And this is where we really want to focus on, because everybody has like one or two needs, like, okay, like we definitely have to have this one certain thing. And then as Joe kind of pointed out, he glossed over it a bit, but we're going to put that into our spiel. Hey, here's the deal. We're actually going to broaden out your search probably a little bit more than what you said. And, if it gets too overwhelming, please let us know and we'll scale it back. But what we found is that oftentimes, sometimes something will pop up that didn't exactly fit your criteria, but maybe it was worth taking a look at. So just for fun, we're going to go ahead and leave this a little broader for right now. But if we need to tighten it up later, please let us know, right?
That's a little bit of psychology, because we know that people often want to see things, and on the spot, they might not even know what they want to say. And so if I send you stuff you don't want to see, and I haven't given you my reason behind it, now you're irritated and I didn't listen to you. If I tell you I'm doing this as a service, all of a sudden I'm very thorough. And now you can communicate and say, hey, I keep seeing these houses north of 85th, and we just can't do that because of school zoning or whatever the case is. Now we get dialogue. So.
Yeah. The worst thing I ever hear, the last complaint I want to hear from a client is they didn't even find my house. Okay. Have you guys ever heard that from an agent? Hey, how was your experience with so-and-so? They didn't even find my house for me. What did they do? Right. And, well, so we also want to kind of let you know, like, finding the house, and we'll go through, and we're going through all these phases. Finding the house is, first of all, that's kind of the least important thing that we're going to do, but that's why we want to really broaden it, because if you don't, then they're sending you listings all the time. Hey, what about this one? Hey, what about this one? And so, yeah. So anyway, I just really want to drill that one home, but.
Awesome. So again, we just talk about, these are where we want to get clarity. I need to find out, are you guys okay with a condo, or does it have to be a single family home? Never have I asked someone if they want a mansion. But, this is just kind of and I'll say things like, what we really want to know is, how big of a home do you have? Is this your permanent home for your kids to graduate school, or is this just a starting home? I want to get to know that. I want them to start thinking more than anything. And the real big one is condition. How many times have we had somebody say, I don't mind putting elbow grease in? You show them like this awesome house, it just needs paint and carpet, and they're like, that's too much work. And so I really want to start, I'm really trying to figure out where they're at with it. You tell me you're willing to do a little elbow grease. What does that mean to you? Well, my husband, before he was a teacher, he used to build houses, so we can do a lot. Okay, great. Or, you know what? It's taking every single thing I have to get into this house. I know that we want more move-in ready for that person, because they're not going to have the resources to get in and start, so these are the things that we just want to start getting those, downloading that info. And location is always going to be probably the biggest driving factor, whether it's because of budget or because of need, but it comes down to location is really where we kind of end up focusing a lot of our time on.
Yeah. And I think it's important that you're right, Joe. And the condition is definitely the biggest. Well, location is huge too, but the condition and location, because, everybody starts off saying they want a fixer upper because of budget. Right. And then you really kind of talk about it, and it's like, well, what does a fixer upper mean to you? Like, well, I can replace some cabinet poles, right? I could put some new cabinet poles on a cabinet, or I can change a light fixture or something like that, and you're like, okay, I mean, that's cool, but that's not really what we're looking at here. This is, these are projects. So it's good to get that kind of that recognition of, do you really want a fixer upper, or is it truly the move-in ready you're looking for? And I find that most every single time, people want the move-in ready home, right? Especially now the younger folks and the tech sector, they just, and this isn't an insult, they just don't know how to do home improvements, right? And so they just can't take all that on. So.
All right. So then I'm going to let them know. This is where I start telling them that it's like Jason mentioned earlier. Oftentimes they're going to send the property they end up buying. So what I tell them is, hey, once we've done this and we've defined your wants and needs, I'm going to set up a search for you in the Northwest MLS. It's going to get sent out to you daily when new listings come on. It also pushes out to all the other services, Redfin, Zillow, Jawai. So any other, my job is to find you the home the quickest as we can. And so if you're already using Redfin because their app is good, please go ahead and I can adjust to how you're working. But just know that sometimes there's a lag there. So you're going to send me properties that have already been sold. And so I'm going to send you the most pure data, but please send me anything that you've already, because I don't want them thinking I'm going to be offended. I want them to just do what they're doing, because I just know that until we really get into homes, we're not going to find you the right home. And so I just want to act like we're all working together, because really we are.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we just, just to double down on that, we want them to feel comfortable using all those other apps, but we would like it if we could get them to use Matrix, right?
Yeah. Also, sorry, when you're done, I want to finish one more thing.
Yeah. So, so we really would prefer if they just use one single source. Have you guys had the buyers? They send you a listing on Zillow, then they send you a listing on Realtor, then they send you a listing on Redfin, and you're trying to look them all up and figure and get them, so it'd be great if they just use Matrix for us. So we do try to kind of lean that direction, but also, it's perfectly fine, whatever tool you'd like to use. Yeah, go ahead, Joe.
Yeah. And I also like to start telling them we can communicate. I tell them the beauty of the Matrix is it's got those hearts that you like. So go ahead and put a heart on the ones you love. Throw it in the garbage if you don't like it. I'm going to see that. And I may be something that I wonder why. So it might trigger me to ask you a question because it's in the garbage. I might say 123 Main Street. It looked like it ticked all the boxes. What is it that you didn't like about that? Oh, we know that neighborhood. Oh, okay. Now I got a little more info. And if you want to ask me a question and not call me, you can do it right there in the Matrix. So I just tell them that it's a great portal to start communication. So we always need to know where we're at in the market. When I first started, they would tell us a neutral market was 6 months of inventory, meaning anything that if nothing came on the market today, it would take 6 months to sell out. I think it's probably been 7 or 8 years since we've had that kind of inventory. And so now what is it? 3 to 4 months. So I always like to tell people that, we're coming off a market. A lot of people have a lot of misconception of what's going on. So this is where we tell them, hey, for the last year, we were in this market where actually one agent sent me a text saying, don't submit an offer unless I'm 200 grand over. They already have 42 offers and that's where they're at. That's not the market we're in now. However, it's a strong buyer's market and it's a strong seller's market. What I mean by that is that we still have a lack of inventory, but we don't have all the buyers out there right now. So houses are sitting. So today we have selection and we also have the opportunity to get the terms that are favorable to you. And so like right now I'm working with two sets of buyers that have bought in the past and they've had to waive inspections. So hearing that we're going to be able to do an inspection is music to their ears right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to piggyback off of that, we want to create urgency, right? Sometimes with buyers, we can get stuck in a lull and so that the last 2 years took that right away, right? There was it was so easy to create urgency. No, you literally have to act right now or we're already on to the next one. Yeah. And so now we're going to be in a point where the market isn't necessarily creating the urgency for us, like the media isn't and whatnot. But I think it's important, and you don't want to scare your buyers away, right? But it's transparency. I mean, so right now, we're still at about 45% sales activity intensity. So we're still in a strong market, which is a healthy market. So we're not in a buyer's market per se. So we can't just kind of sit around and think that listing will be there forever. And as a matter of fact, there are still multiple offer situations. There are still homes that go in the first day. That is still happening. So if we run across something we really love, we should probably still have some urgency, but it's not like it was. And we're not in a seller's market, anymore. So we're in a nice, healthy market, but stuff does still sometimes go off the shelf and still sometimes does have some multiple bid offers, right?
I was thinking about that. Do we just assume that they knew that what the market was like the last 2 years because of the media? Because of course the media will fancifies that crazy market, but they're never going to talk about a balanced market.
No.
So, I mean, is that something, because I've thought about that, do I confuse them more if I tell them about how it was like for the last 2 or 3 years, or they probably already know? So, I was that this slide is, I think, very important. And I was wondering what you thought about that.
I agree, but most importantly, Chris, I think if we think about most times we sit down with buyers, by the time we're in this slide, they've already voiced what their fears are, what their knowledge of it is. It's come out in a form of a question or a statement. And so, but yes, it's definitely a good thing to talk about. I think, if they have any apprehension because of where the market was, it really sets us apart that we have our finger on the pulse. Like, rates have just dropped down. Today we were at 6.3%. I bet a lot of people don't even realize that. So we got to have our finger on the pulse. And so when we talk about that, so we might start to get another rush of buyers as rates have come down. These are all talking points from this slide. So let's get right out there and look at these houses.
Yeah, and I think you should most definitely, because we do have, so we have the one big number right now. Okay, for as buyers agents, there's one number that's working against us. Okay, I think we're all familiar with what that number is. So I think when you talk about the past versus today, that gives me the opportunity to list off all the reasons why now is still an okay time despite that number, right? So lower price, more selection, you can negotiate, you can get seller concessions to buy your interest rate down. You can get, you don't have to waive appraisals. Did I say inspection? You don't have to waive inspection, right? So we're getting all of this that we couldn't get, a year ago for the price of a little bit higher interest rate right now. Thoughts?
Yeah, I like that. My whole thing was, I don't want them to think they missed out on something, right? So, and a lot of buyers, I think, are thinking they missed out on the best opportunity with this interest rate. So I guess to fold it all together, you say, no, you actually have so much more advantages, right? Like a lot of buyers probably thought they missed out on this epic interest rate. But if we really think about it, there was a statistic last year, wasn't it like 50% of people who bought regretted their buy?
Oh, it's more than that.
Yeah.
I've seen recently up to 75%.
Right.
So that doesn't need to happen today, you guys. This is what's really, and maybe drum up that, because a lot of these people had to move so quickly and they didn't even realize, the neighbors next door, we didn't have that neighborhood contingency and they're awful, and all this, whatever. Bring up pain points, I guess, because this is really an advantageous market for buyers.
But yeah, you missed out on low interest rates. You also missed out on paying 50 to 100K over list price.
Or more,
or more. So you missed out on that. That's not, now you don't have that. Congratulations.
Right. And doing that with 15, that's the part that just was blowing my mind while it was happening. We had 15 minutes, and not only did you have 15 minutes, but you had somebody breathing down your neck, knocking on the door for the last 5 minutes of it, and it was just crazy. So, so I think if you talk about the last market in the right way, what did you really miss out on? One silly little thing, but you're getting everything else, So, and then we talk about the financing, creative financing, and also the fact that after any time of inflation, there's usually a rate drop soon after, right? Obviously, we're not promising a rate drop, and we're not guaranteeing that you can refinance, but we're just mentioning that, that is oftentimes something that can happen. So.
All right. So this is where we start to talk to people. And this will start to be a talking point that's obviously in that other market, we weren't really talking to people about anything. We were just directing them to get pre-approved and fully underwritten to be considered having an offer. So this is where we need to really start talking to people. And I tell them, That's great that you went ahead and reached out to your bank to get a pre-approval. What that process look like? Well, I went online, I said I make this amount of money, and I said my credit's like this, and they gave me this. Okay, and so I'll start to tell them that, that's great. Unfortunately, that's probably not going to really make you very competitive and stand out if we do find that unicorn, or if we just want to move quickly. So to put you in the best position is to get you fully not only pre-qualified but fully underwritten, so we can compete with those cash offers. And what I mean by that is, instead of having an approval based off of what you put in the computer, and it's probably pretty accurate, we're actually going to have the underwriters look at your pay stubs. We're going to have them look at your asset statements, and we're going to have them really verify everything. And so we don't have to worry about a final approval when we go out to look at your house. You're fully underwritten and ready to go. It will also allow us to close much quicker because all that preliminary work was done up front.
Yeah, and I'd also like to point out that even in a non-competitive situation, I'm more likely to give you what you're asking for negotiation wise, the stronger your terms are, right? So if you're asking me for, money off or seller concessions, or you're hitting me hard on an inspection, but you have, a Rocket Mortgage pre-qual letter, and then I'm telling my seller, he's like, well, how likely is this to go down? It's like, I don't know, man. It's kind of a roll of the dice, but it was the only offer we got. My negotiation ability has been diminished significantly. But if I'm like, oh, it's an evergreen or a priority, fully underwritten loan, this is pretty rock solid. Okay, well, now maybe I'm a little bit more likely to give in a little bit. So I think there's a ton of advantages to staying fully underwritten, even though we're not necessarily in full competition every time like we were. So,
yeah, I mean, it instills a habit that no matter what market, it always puts you in the best light. And also another thing, I will actually say, you can use a lot of these talking points, whether you're talking to a buyer or a seller, but I'll say, obviously what's most important to a seller, everybody thinks, is the highest net amount. But truthfully, the ability to close is just as important, because that seller, when we make an offer, there may be accepting a job transfer across the country. There may be trying to buy another house that's contingent on the funds of this home. And so the more prepared we are and the more dialed, the more at ease we can put them. Like Jason said, the more favorable they're going to work with us and give us the terms we want.
Yeah, absolutely.
I talk about risk mitigation for the seller, that makes it possible. Like if you had something that was a lot higher in price, but you weren't sure it was going to close, and then something that was sure to close, but maybe a little bit lower, what would you choose? Because the risk is what's important,
Right. And that's an easy point to prove, right? Because as we've all looked at a cash offer versus a finance offer, like how much less would you take for a cash offer versus a finance offer? 10 grand, 20 grand, I mean, it's got value. We all know that. And the other thing is here, I might actually point out one of the other things, if you do happen to have like a little bit less qualified buyer at this point, i.e., an FHA 3% down, here's the deal. You can actually buy today, right? Like a year ago, I probably couldn't have got you into a house. Getting an FHA buyer through some of those bidding wars, pretty near impossible, right? And so now I can actually get you a house. So that's a good thing too. Something worth pointing out.
And this is where we start to sum it up. And I'll just say, one of the things I often hear is when working with an agent is that they can't get a hold of them or they never have good communication. So I'll just talk about my intention. I'll set the expectation of how to communicate. I'll ask how their preferred communication is, and I'll tell them the communication timeline that we'll be on. So the bar is set there.
Yeah. And it's talking about like, negotiation, right? This is a big deal now. As people didn't really see us. It's funny how we were negotiating so hard the last couple of years, but as a buyer, all I'm seeing is, you're giving all my rights and all my money away. Are you really negotiating? Like they had no idea the amount of Oh man, like it was so stressful. Like, you know, Joe and Chris and I and a bunch of us, sometimes we just sit around and we're like, okay, how do we win a 15 offer deal? You know, and we would try all these different strategies. I mean, we're showing up at people's houses, we're delivering offers in person, we're throwing this in, we're enticing with that, you know, like the amount of negotiation necessary to win in that market was a lot harder for us, but I don't think it was recognized. Now people are like, oh, you're actually going to negotiate on my behalf. Like, oh no, I've been negotiating on your behalf. But yes, fine. Let's talk about it, because now you're going to see the savings and the seller concessions and all the things that I can do for you to make sure that you get those favorable terms, right?
And remember that map of sold homes, because that equals relationships. Every single time I've closed a transaction, now I know that agent that knows that I can get it to the finish line. You know, I think that's important as well. Part of, you know, our value proposition, like that we got the last bite of the apple, you know, some of the times, like they'd come back to us saying, hey, Chris, Joe, Jason, whatever the case may be, you know, we really like your offer, but you're a little low. What do you think? Can you come up? You know?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and that's definitely, you know, and then this slide just kind of, because, you know, people get lost. There's so many, as I mentioned before, there's multiple parties involved, parties that some people have probably never even heard of. And so they're going to be getting emails, calls, all that stuff. So I just try to summarize everything here. And I say, okay, you know, so, you know, now today we've went ahead and talked about market strategies. We're going to move forward with your home search. You know, again, when we find that home, I'm going to go to work negotiating on pricing and terms for you. Once we've agreed on all prices and all terms, meaning contingencies, things like that, we're in what's called mutual acceptance. And that means that they've accepted our offer on the terms that we've requested. We've come to terms. And so we have what's called site control at that point as a buyer. You know, and so you will now be instructed within, you know, whatever the days are to go to turn your money into escrow. I'll help you with that. You know, we've got everything sent over to the lender so they can get everything they need to make final application. And you and me, we're going to start working on the contingency. So we'll get your inspection, and I'll talk about the inspection if they have one. And you know, what happens at a home inspection is we're going to get a list of the good, the bad, and the ugly. We're going to look under the hood and know how to move forward. We're going to do one of four things. We're either going to, you know, just walk away the house because it's about to fall down. We're going to ask for some concessions, or we're going to take it as is. And so I'll start talking about that, and I'll say, but what they can't do is say, no, we don't want to sell it to you anymore. So if we essentially ask them to build a whole new house, all they can say is, no way, you're crazy. And we can still move forward on the terms already agreed upon. So we have the control in that situation. After that, the bank's going to start their process and making sure it appraises. Why that's important to you is they're protecting you. You're not going to overpay for a house. So if it doesn't appraise, then we'll come back to the drawing board. We'll figure out, you know, either the seller can bring I don't get into all that detail on it, but we just talk about the appraisal process, you know, and we'll have final approval. It'll go over to title and escrow. They're going to reach out to you to sign and close, and I'm going to give you your keys and a big bouquet of balloons, and we're going to have a good time. You know, it's
Absolutely. And this is like, again, I think, you know, we might get caught up in the idea like, oh, these folks have bought, you know, 4 or 5 houses. Yeah, but have they bought a house like recently? You know, have they, you know, and maybe we can brush over it. But the biggest key here to me is like, I want you to know that being a buyer's agent isn't simply opening a door and then getting a check. You need to understand that I'm putting my license on the line. I'm putting my legality on the line. I'm negotiating multiple different vendors and people on your behalf. And we're keeping track of all these timelines for you. We have all this huge team involved. And so this is where I think we build our value, right? So this slide's important for that reason.
100%. And then I think I already mentioned this, but yeah, one of the things that you hear is that they don't communicate well. So we're going to have you set up on a search that you'll be getting daily. I'll be checking in with you, watching, monitoring it, and staying in constant communication with you as we get out and find you your home.
Awesome. And then at that point, you know, we'll start to create a home search with them and try to set an appointment for the showing, right? So, hey, it looks like there's 5 or 6 listings that match your search criteria. You guys want to go ahead and get out this Saturday and start the search? And typically, yeah, that sounds great. And off we go.